How are you? Welcome to Critical Moves of Telesur. In the midst of the battle that China is fighting against COVID-19 and in parallel with the interference of the West, their maximum organism has gathered to do a balance of the last year and to evaluate the projection for the upcoming months and to also go with their principles of their country. To what are the principles they have arrived to? What are the agreements? Are we at the doors of a Cold War? Is the world economy going down the drain? Let's analyze this. During the closing of the yearly session of the Assembly of the country, there was approval of the National Security Law. During this session that began in May 22, there was the first civil code in the history of this country. Let's listen to statements of the authorities of China. The fight against the pandemic of COVID-19 is a trial for all of us. We have all responded to the orders, and it had a pivotal role in the fight against the pandemic. The Popular Army is ready to help out to the people, and everybody can trust on them. The people are the heart of our party, and we are standing firm in this philosophy of defending the people, regardless of how many pressures there might be, and no matter how many the sacrifices and costs we have to endure. The people are above everything, and the life is above everything else. We protect life and the health of the people above all. The resolution about the protection of the national security that has just been approved shows that the policy of a country needs to be stable and to have stabilized at the long run. We should value the opportunity to live life as at fullest, go through with the obligations of our country, and fight hard for the people. Let's join harder with the Communist Party of China, with Xi Jinping at the head. Let's work harder with open hearts and minds so we can have a decisive battle and triumph over this pandemic and go through with the modernization of China. In the sessions, there have been active proposals, and now there is a consensus about the control of the pandemic, as well as the economic development, as well as the going through with the main objectives of development. There's an important aim and an important strategy at this. Let's locate the country of China. China, a geopolitical power located in Asia with a surface of 9,596,960 square kilometers. The Republic of China is the third largest country in the world after Russia and Canada. It has 14 border countries: Vietnam, Laos, Burma at the south, India, Bhutan, Nepal, and Pakistan, Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Russia, Mongolia, North Korea, and Asia. And they also have border with South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and Philippines, and the sea border. The country is divided in 14 districts, including Taiwan, 4 municipalities, 2 administrative special regions. China is a power of the continent that holds a wide extension, all the way from Japan to the Gulf of Tonkin. Their coasts have the western China Sea, and the other one is the Chinese Sea. They both join Africa and the Indic Ocean with Asia. It is economically very strong due to the abundance of the hydroelectric power, and they have infinite miles of rivers that flow from east to west, and many go to the Pacific Ocean. The agriculture is one of the main elements of the economy. They also have mineral resources. The iron reserve is one of the biggest ones. They were the first they were few consumers of energy in the world. They are the first producers of solar and wind turbines. They are the third producers of cars and a great world power. Ever since 1996, China has led the power of fertilizers, TV, cement. It is the third producers of car after United States and Japan. Many think they are the major commercial power in the world. And this, in fact, of the GDP that they have. In terms of defense, they have the largest armed forces of the world, that is with at least 2.3 million people divided in land forces, air forces, and nuclear forces, known as the Second Artillery. It is a nuclear power that has one of the first merchant marine in the world. It is one of the permanent members of the Security Council with the veto power to expand their territory. They can compete with the West and have influence on other latitudes. China is making important investments with development projects in those countries who have natural resources, as well as creating alliances with all of them. This is why China is like a world alternative bank, when they have a huge amount of money. Let's go and see the organs that just had a session and that today we expose to you. The General Assembly of China is consecrated in the Constitution, and it's the main organ. It is integrated by at least 3,500 congressmen that come from all regions of the country. They are elected by legislators of the diverse provincial organisms. They have 5 years in their seats, and they have a yearly meeting that lasts at least 15 days, where all of the congressmen hear the state of the nation. And later they approve resolutions. It has a permanent council that has authority given by the Constitution, and this is the interpretation of laws in special cases, supervision of the execution and modification of some laws, of which this does not have to be considered by the General Assembly. It is also made up of 9 committees that are affairs of financial, agriculture, science and education, culture and health topics, as well as environment. These committees carry out investigations, carry out measures and suggestions. Apart from the legislation branch, China gives this assembly the power of decide the organs of the supreme organism, the decision in important matters of the country, and supervision over other organs. Previous to this yearly meeting, there is a consultative meeting, which is the maximum order of China. Between 1949 and 54, this organism was the legislation, until the Constitution gave the power to the General National Assembly. This consultative organ comes from all of the sectors, like the military, academic, company, religious, cultural, sports, named as by honor. They don't have a voice and cannot approve the laws. They are the representation of the country of China. They also have local authorities, and many problems of political nature are analyzed in this. They also oversee that the Constitution, as well as other laws, are carried out in a rational way.
Entre otros asuntos de interés común para el pueblo.
How about if we see the strategic point of the report about the State of the Union for the 2020 in China? This is brought by the People Daily in Spanish. The Prime Minister of China presented the State of the Union. His name is Li Keqiang, and this is the 13th session of the Popular Assembly. And it was held on May 22nd. And seeing behind in everything that they did on 2019 and what is yet to come, it says that GDP has increased 6.1, going to $99.1 billion yuans. 13.52 million places of work were created, and there is the unemployment is below 5.3. The index of how much they were able to control the epidemic, it was basically fast, and it was an extremely hard task. The main principles for the development is that there is no determined number for the increase of economy, but it is foreseen that there will be more than 9 million jobs will be created, and at least, and that they expect that unemployment does not go over 6%. There will be more control to avoid any second wave of the pandemic, to stop taxing the companies with $1 billion of help and relief. There will be bonuses for the rural areas. They will extend the use of 5G technology, and they will increase the number of Chinese students that come from rural areas. There will be an extension of the minimum work expectancy, life expectancy. The first phase of the U.S. and Chinese agreement will also go forward, and there will be more judicial and administrative laws that have to do with Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. There are some reactions. These are brought by RT. It says Pompeo informs the U.S. Congress that Hong Kong is no longer autonomous from China. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has notified this Wednesday that the Trump administration does not consider Hong Kong as autonomous from China. This could have consequences of long range for the status that Hong Kong has in terms with Washington. In a recent statement, they say that this is a disastrous decision of China. This is the National Popular Assembly of unilaterally imposing the legislation on Hong Kong. According to Mr. Pompeo, this is just the last of a series of actions that undermine the sovereignty and liberty of Hong Kong. The Congress is will try to withdraw the preferential status that Hong Kong had up until 1997, when they went back to having Chinese control. On Friday, there's a draft of a law to prevent and sanction any acts in Hong Kong that go against the security of China. This draft speaks of secession and interference of the foreign countries. This project of law has generated many protests and international criticism that accuse China of taking back promises of legal measures that were supposed to be in place. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, has declared in the White House that his government is preparing measures against China because they were trying to impose national security laws on Hong Kong. Trump said that his administration is doing something that will be known on the weekend. In response to this, the Foreign Affairs Ministry of China said that they are willing to take countermeasures with any interference of their sovereignty. The government of China is determined to defend their sovereignty sovereignty defense and to defend one country, two systems. And we oppose any interference from foreign countries in any internal affairs. I would like to suggest that you read an article that was published in El Pueblo. It says it's natural that they protest for the security matters in Hong Kong. And it says, it is very important that the National Popular Assembly and their permanent committee increase the legal framework and the application in the special district of Hong Kong to safeguard the national security. This measure is not only a responsibility and a right of the central government. The national security is a prerequisite for the survival and development of a country and must bear in mind their central interest. Countries that have laws, they all fall in the legislation realm. When the law was basically written for the special region of Hong Kong, the central government delegated this region through the Article 23. This article is in the special agreement under one country, two systems. And this does not only show the trust of the government in Hong Kong, but it also shows that they have a constitutional responsibility to safeguard this area. However, this has been impeded in the last years. Hong Kong has confronted a situation that is increasingly concerning, and particularly ever since the protest of the law of extradition in 2019. The independence of Hong Kong and the radical groups in Hong Kong have strived for their independence and have organized crimes that go beyond terrorist nature, supported by foreign governments. And this interferes in affairs of Hong Kong. These defy the final result of one country, two systems, and put at peril the sovereignty of the unity of all of the territory. This is all of the selection that we have made, so you can find out what it's about. You can read it further in Diario El Pueblo. Let's add more details with Iramsi Peraza from China. Hi, how are you? It's a pleasure to greet you. Today, here in China, the annual session of the General Popular Assembly has come to an end, and we must say that one of the most important topics was the approval of the security national law of Hong Kong. Another topic that was a news during these yearly sessions was the decision of China of not establishing a number for their internal development. This with uncertainty caused by the pandemic COVID-19. This has to do with the first time at least 30 years when China does not establish a great growth for 1 year. And the Prime Minister of the country, Li Keqiang, has justified this decision, ensuring that there are many variables that in the future the country will not be able to control. And therefore, they decided to make this decision. As we said, this decision also shook the international markets because we are speaking of the second largest economy in the world, and of their capacity to stand up from this situation. And it all depends on the healthy finance that they have, and this is why there are many doubts. And there are many recovery measures that China has taken and the plans that they have made, so the economy of the second largest economy in the world goes back to the growth path. We must say that without an objective of economy, the Chinese government has said what they call the 6 priorities, and that they must go forward with them so they can guarantee the stability of the country. This is to stabilize jobs. They plan to create 9 million new jobs so they can do front with all of the losses with the COVID-19 and also guarantee the level of life of the Chinese people, as well as the protection of the industrial chains and supplies, and at the end to go forward with relieve the poverty that China had set for this 2020. This announcement of not stating a growth rate for this year has made that the prices of the oil have fallen in more than 5%. This action that has also caused the tensions of the United States and China to go forward, to rise. And let's not forget that their bilateral links are very much worn because of the commercial topics, the pandemic of COVID-19, as well as the constant intervention of Washington in the internal affairs of China. This is all we can report from here. Back to you. Thank you, Iramsi. Let's go to our first pause in our critical moves. Remember that we always have the question of the day, and you can participate with us through this question. Today's is just when the United States has shown the number of over 100,000 dead due to COVID-19, the White House makes the conflict with China even worse, using as a piece, as a tool, using Hong Kong as a weapon. This is all. We'll be right back. Let's begin the analysis and our critical moves. From Argentina, we have Ignacio Villagran. He's the director of the Argentinian-Chilean studies of the UVA, and Dr. Julio Gamino, he's an expert on world economy. Both of you, thank you for being with us in Critical Moves. Ignacio, let's begin with you. We are now analyzing China today, China that's going through this pandemic, and little by little they are overcoming. And this is what we're reflecting on. And now they're looking at the future based on their recent past. And at the same time, they are trying to put out the fire that is igniting from the White House. Yes, in fact, the situation with Washington is very complicated. The beginning of the coronavirus, and in this sense, as the reports indicated, the Trump administration is trying to ignite a fight with China so he can have an internal win. Let's not forget that this is an electoral period, and what he is doing is attacking China. And all of this in respect to the information in regards to the virus and the participation of the World Health Organization in this pandemic. And finally, this that they're going after Hong Kong with this resolution of the Popular National Assembly in regards to any type of activity that is a secessionist or terrorist. within the Special Administrative District of Hong Kong. So they're shielding, they are applying national security laws with all of their right, or is this not so? We understand that it is so. Our analysis starts from the idea that from 97, within the Special Administrative District of Hong Kong. So they're shielding, they are applying national security laws with all of their right, or is this not so? We understand that it is so. Our analysis starts from the idea that from 97, when Hong Kong is back to the national territory of the People's Republic of China, and with this special regime that is one country, two systems, that is a very particular status that was proposed by Deng Xiaoping, so they can have a path from Hong Kong to the motherland. And there have been several recent movements that have generated some fear. We all recall last year all of these measures from the government of the People's Republic for certain criminals that were in Hong Kong. And this had to be done in a certain way, and there were some restrictions. And this generated a lot of fear and protest. This did not escalate at the end, and now in this new period, what they're trying to do is that there are no activities that are trying to operate and bring back to this to the situation of 2017. And that there be no dismemberment of the territory based on the fact that there is a special nature of the Hong Kong country. Thank you, Ignacio. Dr. Julio, can you tell us your vision? Because here, from the economic perspective, there is something that is necessary to analyze, which is that China and the United States are the biggest two economies that are igniting this fire that is begun by Washington, not by Beijing. Well, yes, the initiative and the aggression in trying to find a commercial war on behalf of the United States against China. And the answer of China is, okay, we will answer in the same nature, that we are being attacked. And I think that the struggle for the economic first place has come for some years already. And the truth is that the United States is on a downward spiral of it having the leadership on the economy and politics. And on the contrary, China is going upward. And this can be seen in the Trump era. And meanwhile, China has taken up the flag of liberalization, of world trade, and seeking to expand the economic relations of China with the world. And on the contrary, the United States has this political stance of America first, which of course implies closing the economic borders of the United States. And what they're trying to do is to bring back the capitals that left the United States a couple of years ago. Well, now with the coronavirus, this becomes even worse. We can say that in both countries, things are going not so well. Let's not forget, United States has 40 million workplaces lost, and unemployment has increased to 20%. China, that is where the coronavirus appeared, had a very hard first semester with a loss of 6.8 of their gross production. And this is why, for the first time, the authorities of China have not established a growth rate, because there are many things that are variable and that are not in their hands. Nowadays, China is focusing on the income of the working population of China, and to fix what has been for over a decade their main strategy, which is the internal growth. But of course, a very important part of the Chinese economy has to do with international commerce. And of course, internationally, there is a downward of exchange because of coronavirus, and also because there is a recession that was coming from before. And this means that there is a reduction in their exportations. This has an impact on their production. China is the factory of the world, and it's clear that China has difficulties to put its products on the market. So there is, in a way, a restructuring of the Chinese economy to highlight their work internally. This is jobs, nutrition, and on the other hand, to maintain how to place their products in many markets. This is why, for the first time, there is this policy of not having clean and clear numbers of economic growth. Only though international organisms have said that China is the only country that this year will grow 1% at least. But, however, compared with all of the rest of the world economy that's going to fall for 3%, we see that China is in better conditions, not only because of the dispute with the United States, but also so they can continue with their position as a leading power. Okay, so taking baby steps, as is said in English. Thank you very much, Dr. Julio Ignacio. I would like to talk to you about with this that has just been approved by the National Popular Assembly in terms of security. Is there an end to what happened in Hong Kong? Is there an end to all of this? And therefore with Taiwan too, or not? Well, I think that right now what they're trying to do is reinforce to stop the interference of external powers. So due to the history of Hong Kong, in the history of China, and the vision of the government of Beijing, it is very important that Hong Kong be a successful experience of reintegration to their mainland, and above all because of what also seeing the vision of Taiwan and trying to maintain this stance of one country, two systems as an example, attractive example, to have a successful reintegration to the motherland. Thank you, Ignacio. Dr. Julio, I also had a question that I wanted you to clarify. This based on the reaction that comes from the United States, basically from the Trump administration, where they do not accept Hong Kong as an autonomous territory in regards to China. And this could have an influence in the commercial activities that may be affected, in the long run. How could this be how could this be affecting China? Well, United States is not in the condition to impose the basic laws of exchange with China. I think that we must see how Trump Trump is a bully in the electoral year when he is trying to show the electorate of the United States that the Trump option is the best one to defend the U.S. interests. This is why Trump has an aggressive action. Well, he negotiates and he threats. And China ensures very important purchases to the United States. And this might help the United States overcome their deficit. I think it's important to differentiate the tantrums that Donald Trump throws, as opposed to the reality of the exchange that Trump needs. This is for the U.S. companies and the U.S. producers and the consumers in themselves. And this has to do with their foreign policy. This is why it's important to differentiate even everything he says with the economic reality that is behind him. Dr. Julio, thank you, and Ignacio, thank you for your time to Critical Moves. A big hug to both of you. Let's establish our second pause. Remember that we have the question of the day, and you can participate as an investigator. Just when the United States has the number of 100,000 dead due to COVID, they are trying to fight against China using Hong Kong as a weapon. Are we at the doors of a Cold War? We'll be right back. After almost 3 months of an intense fight against COVID-19, the government of China has begun their reactivation of their economic life, while they are still seeking for a vaccine for the COVID-19. Let's go over this context. After more than 2 months of confinement that paralyzed Wuhan, China is back to normal in a gradual way, so they avoid a new wave of the coronavirus. Wuhan, the capital of Hubei, with more than 11 million people, was the scene of the first sprout of the coronavirus, and then spread to the rest of the world. To combat this, Xi Jinping has imposed social protection laws. There are almost 3 million people infected, and now they are back to a new phase to reactivate their activities. In parallel, the scientific community are trying to find the vaccine and a cure. However, they still have to fight the reaction of Washington, saying that they were the ones who created and spread it. The tensions between these two countries are still higher. While this threatens the implementation of phase 1 of the commercial agreement. President Trump has threatened by imposing new measures because he says that there might be a suspicion that the virus came from a laboratory in Wuhan at the beginning of May. Both countries decided to create the best conditions to go forward with the de-escalation of the tax war. Let's continue with the analysis. And now we're talking with Marcelo Ramirez. He's a geopolitical analyst. Thank you for being with our Critical Moves. First of all, I would like to ask, how do you see China after being able to defeat this first phase of COVID-19? Well, I think that China has a huge advantage. They were able to combat the COVID-19. We see that China has practically been able to reduce the cases that they now have. They are all imported cases. They are being cautious with their activities, and now they are ready to set forth some economic sectors. Of course, this is a slow process because this epidemic might be with us for 1 or 2 years. Which will make that there is going to be a slow opening back. But I think that the great advantage that they have the capacity to do so is because they're a disciplined society, and this allows them to have some flexibility. And this gives them more leeway than the Western countries. They have their own political systems to put forward in the crisis. You have just mentioned something important, something pivotal in this context, Marcelo, which is this capacity of decision that comes from the Chinese government, this organization that rules itself under the orientation of the Communist Party. And here we see these two organs that were just recently sessioning, and on which there were the main lines. What are the relevance of these organs in the economic framework, being such a huge country and so diverse ethnically, culturally, that with the eyes of the West we could say that it's sort of hard to control? Well, the problem is to attain two phenomena that are parallel. One, the Marxist and Leninist system with Chinese characteristics, because what they do is to adapt the communist principles, and this comes from the time of Mao. And they have been able to adapt it to their tradition, to their culture, to their way of being. And this coexists with a tradition, an important tradition that has 5,000 years of tradition. Their actions, their way of moving. China has been able to synthesize the ideology that has been working for them. And this way of thought, this way of thinking allows them to have been very efficient in this process. The organs that you just mentioned are characteristics of a more important way of being, but it has a limited counter force internally. So this pushed them forward with having a better social development. As I told you before, this system has proven to be very fast and efficient. And this goes against the thought that socialist governments are slow. This is not the case of China. And if it's true that changes are sort of slow, this has to do more with their culture more than their political system. Bearing in mind what you just said, what are the strengths that the Chinese government has now to shield themselves, just like the report of this assembly has said, and shield the national security? Well, China knows that they have 3 hotspots, and from the West, they're trying to use it to destabilize their government. Well, one is Hong Kong, Taiwan. Hong Kong is an enclave that's autonomous, but it depends on China and defense and international relations. From there, China has been able to put everything that happens in perspective. And what they're trying to do is continental China is making now the decisions. And they're trying to impede that there be any infiltrations of foreign governments with the appearance that may seem like NGOs that are in favor of certain rights, of liberty of press that is understood like the Western one. I think the characteristic of China, of having for many years, having their own systems to combat the Western news media, this along with their cultural tradition, the only point where this is harder is in Hong Kong. This is why today China is going to close the doors to the foreign forces that are trying to penetrate through Hong Kong to the rest of the continent. I think that the great advantage is the discipline, the nationalism of China. And let's not forget that China is socialist and extremely nationalist. China is characterized for being a country that is extremely nationalist, and they have to close ranks against the United States and other countries. Well, thank you for touching on this topic, because other analysts agree, just as you have, in the fact that London continues to manifest a close tie with Hong Kong. They say that's even historical. However, the West speaks more of what the White House says. So I wanted to ask you how much the White House and London been able to penetrate this region. Well, they have been able to penetrate it. But if you see it in a softer way, this is the same thing that happens in other countries. We haven't even seen this in many other countries. Well, students in the decades of the 50s, 60s, and 70s were much rebel. And now they are the most open to the Western propaganda. So if we see why these sectors, why the Western intelligence has been able to have an open door, they are the first to mobilize the protests in Hong Kong. And they have been mobilized by the students and intellectual groups that support policies that have nothing to do with the Chinese history, and not even to a socialist, and not even with their identity. And what they want is a Western and European culture to go to China. So I think these are one of the most important factors to bear in mind. And the last one is that they have been very keen, I think far more than the United States, because they are seen as a huge, that is sort of lured, that is sort of heavy. And they are not agile enough to react. Their way of acting are more subtle than the United States. Do you think that that both Washington and London be able to gain territory once that China has dictated these laws that try to shield their jurisdiction and their sovereignty in terms of Hong Kong? I don't think so. Sincerely, I think that the most dangerous time for China just went by. I think now the technological capacity, the military capacity, is giving them a platform on which they can resist any type of attack from the West. This model that has been used now, it was always based on the support of a third country. Let's not forget that the West was richer, they had more resources, against socialist country that had difficulties in many aspects. So this situation has totally changed. Now they are in a difficult situation, both the Americans as well as the British. What we see is that they don't have that force, and they have not been able, and they have lost the aspect that we could say that were an example. Now, nobody says we want to be like Europe or the United States. These are countries with great difficulties, countries with productive problems, and culturally they are not doing anything. So, from Hong Kong, I don't think that they will take such a system that is so different than theirs. I think that at the end, they will lose this battle, and they will go back to being part of China. And China has showed that they have been able to take these legislative decisions. Marcelo, thank you very much for participating with us with Critical Moves. A big hug until next time. Thank you too. That was Marcelo Ramirez. Let's go to conclusions. Once again, on the table, the concepts of national sovereignty, self-determination, respecting the Constitution, in contrast to threats that have been pushed forward by the United States to destabilize the order in a nation. Where will all of this end? Is the new Cold War at our doors? Is it a coincidence that it happens in the midst of the COVID-19, where the so-called first economy has over 100,000 dead, with an emerging economy that is doing baby steps and overcoming the strike of the coronavirus, and is projecting themselves as the stability with their economic apparatus. We know that China is totally aware that they have to shield their territory, and they also know that it's not enough to make a wall that can be seen from the space. It's urgent to call on the non-aligned because they have lots to say about this. This is all for today. Thank you very much.